Come to my world, won't you come on in?
Hej, mit navn det er Stig Ulrichsen, og welcome to my world. I denne uge har jeg fået besøg af en gæst. Han er trommeslager. Han har spillet overalt i hele verden. Mest kendt er han nok som trommeslager i bandet Slade. Men hvad mange ikke ved, det er, at han er dansk statsborger. Han har boet her i landet i rigtig mange år efterhånden. Ja, han har faktisk boet her i Østjylland i rigtig mange år efterhånden, nemlig i nærheden af Silkeborg. Hans navn, det er Don Powell, og vi skal tale lidt omkring hans udgivelser, vi skal tale omkring hans liv, og i det hele taget også livet i Silkeborg. Han har aktuelt med denne her, Don and the Dreamers, helt ny LP, der også er udkommet som CD. Welcome, Don, and I don't know, since you have been living in Denmark for quite a while, if you understood all I was saying.
Not all of it, Steve. The thing is like English people are the worst trying to speak a foreign language or a different language. They expect everyone to speak English. You know, it's always been the same, you know, but I understand more Danish than I speak. I know when the children are talking about me, I know what they're saying there, but yeah, but like I said, everyone speaks English, so I don't have a problem. You know.
And today we're going to talk about your new albums.
Okay.
We're going to talk about your life.
Okay.
And talking about your life,
yeah.
How is it to live in Denmark? You have been living here for many years, but what was your first impression of living in Denmark? Because back in the days you were touring with Slade here,
yeah.
and that was probably the first time you saw Denmark. But how was it actually to live in Denmark compared to just touring, being in a hotel, playing a show, and then go back?
I think you have an incredible country. I mean, I'm just sorry. I'm not just saying that, Steve. I mean, I've been here for about at least 15 years now, and it's lovely to be in a country where people respect their country. And I've been, like I said, I've been lucky enough to travel the world like I have, touring. And I always say to my stepchildren when I come back, don't ever complain about Denmark. I said, you don't realise what a fantastic country you have here, and people have respect for their country, have respect for everyone else, and their respect for people's belongings, and that is just a fantastic thing to see, Steve. And I always explain to my friends when I'm travelling, I always say I have a wonderful life in Denmark, and it's so peaceful, and people are so respectful, and you know it's great. I love it here.
And you live in one of the most beautiful areas of Denmark too, so that must also help. I visited you and your wife some years ago,
yeah.
And it's just a very beautiful area you live in.
It is. Like I remember, sorry, when I first met my wife Hannah, she was living down near the German border. She's a school teacher by profession, and she was teaching at the school near the German border, and it was very quiet there, and she says, I don't think you'll be able to settle here. So my hometown is Silkeborg, so I'll move back there. We can live there. And it is absolutely beautiful. We got the forest, the lakes, and it is a beautiful place. I always say to the children, don't ever complain, you have a beautiful place where you live. And some of my English family have been over to visit us, and they always say the same thing, what a beautiful place you live in. And it is. Silkeborg is beautiful.
Did you have any surprise living in Denmark? You know, one thing is touring in Denmark, as we talked about before, but living in Silkeborg, for example, was there something that was surprising for you when you started living in Silkeborg? The people or the shops or the places compared to England where you lived, and you also lived in America for 3 years?
No, I mean, like I said, I've been lucky enough to travel the world like I have, touring with Slade, and so I'm used to different cultures. You know, so I found I could adapt to the Danish way of life so easily. You know, so and it's and like I said, the people are so nice and friendly and accommodating, and it's just it's just a wonderful place to be. I always say, you know, what a beautiful place Denmark is.
Yeah. And what about when you go out, because you still travel out to do shows in other countries? Is it easy to travel out from Denmark to other places?
Yeah, it is. I mean, that was my only concern at the start, Steve, but the world's become a small place today, and it's so easy to travel anywhere in the world. I mean, as long as I have time to organize a travel situation, flights or drive anywhere, it's not a problem today. It's so easy these days, you know. Like I said, the world's become a small place today.
Yeah, and I would like to talk a little bit about your latest albums, because you have played with Slade for many years.
Yes.
You know, since you started out in the
1966.
66,
yeah.
So it's a long time playing with Slade, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the program.
Okay.
Because right now I would like to talk about some of your new albums, because you are no longer playing with Slade anymore. No. So you have found some new bands. One of them you have done recordings with are English, but other ones, like the one I showed before, is Danish musicians.
Yeah, and that's been a fantastic learning for me, Steve, because Henrik, the musical director from the Dreamers, he contacted me, asked me if I would be okay to record with some Danish musicians, and I said, yeah, I'll be fine. And I didn't know the guys like Henrik and sort of Knud and Eric, you know, sort of, I didn't know these guys, but my wife Hannah knew them all from their different profession and different bands around Denmark, and she said they are very well respected musicians. So we just got together in the studio near Copenhagen, and we were just sort of basically playing cover songs that we all knew, so we didn't have to spend spend a lot of time rehearsing or learning new things. And so we decided to make the album It's Never Too Late to Be a Rock Star, and we all basically knew the songs anyway, because they were basically really sort of standard songs from the past. So it went down really quickly, and it was a new thing for me, because as you said, I've been playing with Slade for all these years. And so it was nice to learn something new, the way different musicians work, and different styles, and it was like a new education for me, and it was wonderful. We just went in the studio and we just played, and we had a great time doing it, and the tracks went down really quickly.
I've seen the pictures of the world and they're for real. I had a red light up the wrist without me even getting kissed. It still seems so unreal. I've seen the morning in the mountains of Alaska. I've seen the sunsets in the east and in the west. I sang the glory that was Rome and passed the hound on singers home. It still seems for the best. And I'm far, far away, with my head up in the clouds. And I'm far, far away, with my feet down in the crowd, letting loose.
And one of the songs is one of my favorites, you know, Far, Far Away, which is an old Slade song.
Yeah.
Is it played the same way like Slade did it, or is it played in a different way?
Actually, you said that's my favourite Slade song as well, mainly because of Noddy Holder's lyrics, because they talk about when Slade was travelling the world non-stop in the 70s, and it's a story about that really. But anyway, no, I mean, we didn't really the arrangement wasn't really that different from Slade, except we augmented with some strings, and a slightly different arrangement, but it was, at first I didn't want to re-record any Slade songs. I wanted to do all different ones, but Henrik said that's one of his favourites, so he wanted to record it. So I said, okay, let's do it.
Well, if it's one of his favorites, well, then it must be very special for him to play with the original drummer from Slade.
And that was great, actually. Like I said, it's my favourite Slade song, and I really enjoyed playing it. I hadn't played it for a while, and so it was nice for me to get back into it.
Yeah, and some of the songs have also been done in Lundgaard Studio here in Jylland. Also, I can see on the album track. So the album is made as a LP and it's made as a CD. How come you have made both parts?
Well, I think I think vinyls are coming back. Really, Steve. I mean, you see it now. I mean, at one point it just became only CDs, and but I find now when I'm travelling and I see a lot of people, a lot of vinyl shops are opening up again, and it's becoming a new thing. And my children are getting into vinyl as well. I've noticed that my vinyl collection is slowly disappearing. You know, the children are taking them, you know, sort of thing. But it's nice, actually. It's nice, that.
Yeah. So you listen to LPs yourself?
Yeah, I do. I think a lot of time now is sort of. I buy mostly CDs now, Steve, because I can play them in the car as well when I'm travelling, and I have my headsets and CD player while I'm travelling, so it's much easier than taking vinyls.
I think it's a little bit more difficult to play a vinyl in a car.
That's it, yes, especially while you're driving.
Well, you have to turn it around.
Yeah.
But and you also made another vinyl, you know, Don Powell's Occasional Flame, Just My Cup of Tea.
Yeah.
How did you get into that project?
Well, the two guys, Paul Coxon and Les Glover, they contacted me when I was still in England, Steve, and asked me if I would do some drums on some of the tracks that they recorded. I said, yes, of course I will. And that was like just in the centre of England, and I went, and it happened really quickly. Some of the songs that Paul and Les had already written, and we did, and I was having such a great time, and I thought, can we do some more? And then we just sat down, and the three of us started writing together. And it went really quickly, and so the same again, we just went in the studio and played, you know, sort of no machines, no computers, we just went in and played, and it was great fun.
And the album, is that both albums, are they out on the internet so you can actually buy them online today? Yeah.
I mean, it's so different today. I mean, sort of communication these days, it's a whole new world, isn't it? Technology today. And I remember walking in the studio the first time. I haven't been in the studio since the 80s when I was there with Slade. And I went in the studio, and the first thing I was looking around, where's the tape machine? Where's the tape machine? And they're all laughing at me, and they say, when was the last time you were in the studio? It all goes onto this now, onto the computer. It's so different. I always think back, I always quote it, you know, you think the Beatles' first LP was made in one day, you know, sort of thing, because they were unknown, and that's all EMI were given. They gave them 1 day, so they made their first album in 1 day, you know. And
later on they got more time to do the recordings.
God, sometimes you can. I remember the one time, this is back in the UK, Steve, we did a take on something, it was with Slade, and there was a squeak on my pedal. And I thought, oh no, and the guy said, oh, I can fix it. He got the tape off the machine. He was like that, sort of moving it. I said, I can just go down and oil the pedal and just do it again. You know, it'll take 2 seconds. About 2 hours later, he was still there trying to find this squeak. I said, I could have done an album by now. But it's just the way the technology it is today. Some of it's good and some of it's not so good. You know, I suppose I'm from the old school, and I just sort of like to go in the studio and go 1, 2, 3, let's go. You know, I suppose really I'm from the old school like that.
Yeah. But it's rarely that they do the recordings that way nowadays.
No, I know. I've had to adapt. You know, I've had to learn these things. You know, sort of thing. My son Stefan Andreas always laughs at me. And you know, say, well, you're from the Stone Age, you know, things like that. They can do things so easily today.
Yeah. And now you say Andreas. Yeah. Andreas is also working a lot with music, and actually one of his ideas was to see if he could restore the Puck Studios outside Randers. Yes. But unfortunately it burned down, so yeah, I guess he gave up that project.
That's right, because I mean, Puck Studios, even way back when, well, say in the 70s, was just such a famous studio here. I know he's had a lot of established, I believe Elton John recorded there at the
George
time.
Michael, yeah.
Yeah, they did that. And Andreas was thinking about buying the premises. And we went to have a look at it, and I thought, this is great. And also, it's like what's happening with studios today, or if there are any left, where you could live there. You could live and eat there and record there when you want to. And But I thought this is going to be fantastic, this. And then I think it was a week later, it burned down.
Yeah.
So that was scrapped. I mean, he was so disappointed. That it would have been a great project for him, you know, that one. And I would have helped him there. You know, I could have helped him with equipment and things like that. It would have been a fantastic project.
Also, because it's a studio that is legendary.
Yeah.
And if you just talk about people here in this part of Denmark and Randers and the area around, you know, it's a place that makes us proud that we have a place like the Puk Studios.
It was fun.
A lot of big recordings was done there, also with Danish artists, Shubidua and Bamses Venner.
Yeah.
I've been in, I did recordings in the old days.
Did you?
And I was in the Puk Studio with Shubidua when we did the recordings, and with the Bamses Venner, we did those recordings there.
It's fantastic.
Many artists have been.
Yeah, I mean,
there.
it's a great property. I thought, wow, this could be fantastic, like a residential studio where the musicians could stay there, live there, eat there, and record when they want to. We've done that a few times. We did it at John Lennon's place, Tittenhurst Park. We did some recordings there, and I did some recordings with Susie Quattro and Andy Scott, and we used Peter Gabriel's studio, Real World Studio in the UK, and that was a great experience. And it does make a difference. It means you don't have to watch the clock. You know, oh, we've got to finish now. It's 9 o'clock or whatever. You can sort of. Have a meal, go have something to eat, and then record when you want. You don't have to be there at a certain time, and it makes things a lot more relaxed.
Yeah,
you know.
And you live there also.
Yeah, you live there, you eat there, and like you record, and you can sort of sit around, and there's no watching the clock that we have to finish soon. You know, it's you can record when you want, and it's really incredible. But even so, with equipment these days, I mean, like I said, our son Andreas in our loft at home, he's got like recording equipment. You know, they're just tiny mixing desk and a few little things like that, and you can cut masters there. You know, it's so different today. You know, sort of thing. I remember sort of years ago how we sort of we had to be careful. We had this recording studio, and it was next to an embassy, and we had to be careful at certain times, and they were sending messages back to whatever country it was on Morse code, and it was coming over the system, so we had to stop recording while they sent their message. I wish we could find out what they were saying. You know?
Oh, that's a great story. Yeah. Back to where we were before we start talking about your son Andreas and the Puk Studios. We talked about your records, and you're no longer a part of Slade. But what do you do now? Do you play in any bands now, or is it just from project to project?
Project to project, really, Steve. I mean, we've done that with Don and the Dreamers, the Danish guys, the musicians, which was a fantastic experience, with Paul and Les. And I've got some English musicians, there's like Craig Fenney, Steve Worley, and they were both in the original Slade lineup when Dave and myself went back on the road. And we got some other people there, and we've been doing some recording in England. So it all looks pretty good at the moment. I'm quite happy. I'm quite content the way things are at the moment. You know, sort of we just see what happens.
And do you go on tour, or do you go out playing gigs still?
There's nothing planned at the moment. I mean, we're just more interested in making product. You know, to get some recordings done. I mean, I've had over 60 years of being on the road. It's nice to sort of take things easy a bit now. You know, so I've been around the world. I always say I've been around the world 4 times. I can tell you what airports, hotels and concerts look like, but the rest of the place I've got no idea.
Yeah. And you don't miss being on a stage, because it's 2 different things, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Being on a stage in front of a live audience, or being in a studio just sitting the musicians and the technician. Oh,
totally different. I mean, I've had, like I said, over 60 years of touring, and that's been fantastic as well. But it's nice now. You can be a bit more creative in the studio, you know, on the way sort of technology is today, and also the way you can get your things across on TV. We're making videos and sending them out to the TV stations. It's so different today. But some of it's good, some of it's bad, you know. But you know, it's the way things are today.
And regarding things, how they were and things like that, we are going to talk a little bit about that also. And as people can see here, there's also a book, Look What I Done, Don Powell, My Life with Slade. Yeah. And you did that with a Danish author some years ago. Yeah. How was it to sit down and get a book written about your life?
Well, I must owe a lot to Lisa Falkenberg, the Danish writer, the lady who wrote the book. She was absolutely incredible. I mean, it's sort of, we sat down, we had a few sessions together, you know, sitting down talking, and it's sort of, you never know how to really open up at the start, you know, what to write about. And it was Lisa who said, you know, after a few meetings together, she says, well, come on, Don, open up to me. Open up to me, he said, because the people who know you will know, oh, he's conveniently missed that bit out, or he hasn't mentioned this, so I put everything in. And what I did, as you said, I've kept diaries for all the years, so I said to Lisa, here's all my diaries. Just read. And she says, I'm not a dirt writer, you can read everything before it's put into the book. And I said, because I don't want to cause divorces. I said, I don't want to have to go into hiding, you know, and to never see me again. And she was fantastic. She says, I'm not that kind of writer. So it's basically, it's purely fact that's in the book. And she did a fantastic job. But I'm glad she said that to me, Steve, when she said, open up to me. He said, because like I said, people who know you will know you've missed that bit out, or you haven't mentioned that. You know, I mean, I had an alcohol problem, which is all in there, so I didn't want to hide anything like that, and it's great. It's great. She did a great job.
It's a great book. I had the privilege to read it, and I have also had the privilege to talk with you before and hear you telling some of all the fantastic stories from your life. And you actually feel that when you read the book. You've done so perfectly that actually when I read the book and I read the stories, it's like sitting in front of you and hearing you telling the stories, you know.
But
so
like I said, I think I have to give all the credit to Lisa. You know, the way she wrote it was fantastic. Like I said, but I gave her my diaries, you know, sort of thing. And it's really funny when I told all my friends, and like Noddy Holder, Jim Lee and Dave Hill, they all went white. I said, don't worry. So it's okay. But Lisa said to say, you will read it first, and I will cross anything out that you feel it shouldn't be there.
Now, I don't know your diaries, but I can also imagine that you have been telling stories to her. After she read the diaries, she have probably asked you questions, and you have been telling stories, because I can feel the stories in here, and I don't think you've been writing them in that fantastic way like you're telling it, because you are really, and people will notice that in a moment when you start talking about your life, that you are a very good storyteller.
Oh yeah, I've got some great stories. I mean, really, I've been very lucky, Steve, you know, sort of with my profession, playing drums in a really famous band. I've been able to travel the world like I have. I always said the world became a small place, you know, to sort of travel. And you know, the people that I've met all my heroes, like the Beatles, or all my heroes. And I was lucky enough to play drums with Ringo Starr when he actually did a concert in Horsens. And he asked me, I went along, I arranged to get backstage, and we had met him before when he was living in Los Angeles. I think he still lives there. He came to one or two of our shows in Los Angeles, and I was like a little school kid, you know, like a little fan when I saw him. It was fantastic. But he's so down to earth, Ringo is. And when I went to see him to do that show here in Denmark, it was arranged that I could go backstage and say hello, and he said to me, do you want to get up on stage and play? I said, you try and stop me, you know. And he said, well, you can play my drums, I'll be down the front singing, you can play my drums. And I played the last two songs of his concert, which was With a Little Help from My Friends and Give Peace a Chance, and I've got the photographs to prove it.
That's great.
Yeah, fantastic.
And that's another thing, is that I remember that your phone book is very full of numbers for people that we all would love to call one time in our life, you know. Because you have I think you have for most of the artists from the golden age, you know, of music.
I've been very...
Is it people you still talk with, you know, from time to time, like Ringo?
Yeah, I haven't spoken to Ringo for a long time. I used to see Brian May a lot when I was still living in London. And I mean, he has some great stories. Yeah, can I say this story about
yes,
it?
Please.
He was telling me it was around the time when Bohemian Rhapsody was #1. It was #1 for 9 weeks in the UK, and he was telling me, he said, because Freddie Mercury wrote that song, and he was telling me, he said, Freddie got this song. He said he was playing it to us, and of course he kept on stopping because all the different sections to it, you know. He said, and by the time we finished the song, we were on the floor killing ourselves laughing, saying we can't do this. And Freddie was there, it will work, and the rest is history. Fantastic, really. And it's like when we used to tour America a lot, we did a lot of concerts with Kiss. And I will say the one thing about Kiss, Gene Simmons, and there's only Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley left from the original band when we toured with them in the 70s in America. They always say, Kiss always say that their biggest influence was Slade. And they were telling us, we used to play this theatre in New York called the Academy of Music on a late Saturday evening. And he was saying that Gene was telling me that him and Paul Stanley always came to our shows there. And they said, we're going to get that show and take it further. And they certainly did. And I remember when we did a few shows with them in the States, we hadn't really spoken to them then, and we hadn't really seen them, except for when they were on stage. And I was sitting at breakfast this one morning, and this guy came up and he was sort of saying how much he liked Slade songs and the Slade show and different things. I said, oh yes. I said, thank you, that's really nice. Are you in the business? He said, yeah, I'm Gene Simmons, man. Without the makeup, I didn't recognize him, you know, but they really are nice guys. I remember when they came, it's been a few years ago now, they played a show in Copenhagen, and I arranged to go and see them, and what they do during the afternoon of the concert, they do like an unplugged thing in like a small part of the theatre, in the foyer of the theatre, or some small part, and I arranged for their tour manager to get me in. I think they invite about 30 people to this unplugged, and I said, don't tell them I'm here. He said, I think they know you're here. Anyway, I was hiding behind this guy in front of Gene Simmons, and they did a few songs like unplugged, and then they said, do you have any questions? Anybody got any questions? And I turned around and I said, are you going to play any Slade songs tonight? And they said, we knew you were here, and they started jamming Runaway, one of the Slade hits, you know, but really nice guys.
Yeah, and you met a lot of them, and you have great stories, I know, from many fantastic meetings. But first I would like to go back so people can just stay watching, and you'll get more anecdotes from Don later on. Okay. Because going back a little bit, you know, to the starting days, when did you get interest for music, and when did you get your first set of drums, and was it drums you were playing to begin with? Yeah,
I mean, it started, I used to play, I was in the Boy Scouts from when I was 11 years old till about 16 years old, and I learned to play drums in the Boy Scouts, really. And two guys, I was just in this youth club, just playing table tennis, and two guys came in, Johnny Howells and Mickey Marson. John was a singer and Mickey Marson was a guitarist, and they'd heard that I played drums through a mutual school friend, and they came to this youth club and asked me if I would like to play drums with them, and I hadn't got any idea what that really meant, you know. And I said, well, I don't have any drums, and I did happen to know a school friend, David Bowdley. He had a set of drums, and he let me use them, let me borrow them. I had those for years, those drums. He never asked for them back. I would have them for years. And Johnny and Mick were a few years older than me, so they were into things like with Elvis, Buddy Holly, people like that who I'd never heard of before. I was into whatever the pop songs were around at the time, so it was a whole new world for me. And we used to play just at youth clubs and birthday parties, wedding parties and things like that. And it was that's how it started for me, really. And it was just a fantastic learning thing. because we'd heard about the Beatles doing the month stints in Germany, playing for many hours a night, and we got an offer to go to Germany to play in Dortmund, and we thought, yes, we'll do what the Beatles are doing, and it was playing like 8 hours a night for. It was sort of, I think it was, we earned about 140 krona a week each.
Okay.
But it was enough.
Yeah.
It was enough. We only lived on chicken and chips or whatever it was that was sort of there, and we stayed in a farmhouse. But it was a great learning curve.
Yeah.
You know.
What city were you from at that time? What city did you grow up in?
A place called Wolverhampton.
Wolverhampton.
It's near Birmingham, in the centre of England.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then in your band you went to Germany.
Yeah.
And how long time did you play in Germany back then?
For 1 month, it was normal then to play 1 month. I remember.
And then back to Wolverhampton.
Yeah, we played 1 month in a city called Dortmund, and it was November 1965. You know, it was winter, and the accommodation, the place where they let us live, you had no heating, no hot water. We had to boil water in saucepans and kettles. You know, I don't think I had a bath for a month. I think there was no hot water there, and it was, like I said, it was snow, and then. The year later, when the original Slade formed with Noddy Holder and Jim Lee, we decided to go to Germany for a month, so to get to know each other and get to sort of get together playing and all that kind of thing. And we went to Kiel in Germany, and the top of the bill there was a guy named Paul Raven, who became Gary Glitter. And I always remember that the manager of that particular club, he hated us. He always said we were too loud, he didn't like what we were playing, and I think we lasted about a week. He wouldn't pay us. We had no money, but Gary Glitter used to take us out and buy us coffee and sandwiches, you know, because we had no money, you know, and we had to sort of leave. After 1 week, like I said, the manager hated us, so we just left after a week. And that's when we got we got that thing then, we're going to make it now. We're going to do something now. We've been through this, you know, horrendous experience. We want to do something.
Yeah, and let's just go a little bit back, because you how did you get to meet Dave and Noddy and Jim?
Well, when I was with Johnny and Mick, you know, sort of this guy who wanted to manage us, a guy named Chalky, he wanted to manage us, and he said, I think you need another guitarist. You know, and we said, well, we don't know anybody. And he said, I know this young guy who's playing in this band, and I don't think he's very happy there. And it was Dave Hill. And we used to rehearse in our singer Johnny's house, and Dave came one Sunday afternoon, and we rehearsed, and it just worked straight away. And that's how that band sort of lasted for just over a year, I think, like that. But Noddy Holder was in another local band in our hometown, and Dave and myself just met Noddy in a coffee bar in Wolverhampton. And it was, you know, because we knew we'd done a few shows together, only in pubs and clubs. And then we found out his group had just broken up and our group was breaking up, and we said, shall we try and make a group together? And then we auditioned for a bass player, which Jim Lee came along, and that's how that started, really.
And then the name was not Slade back then?
No, we were the in-betweens then, you know, and I remember we did this recording audition in London, and the manager of the record company, he hated that name. He hated the name The In-Betweens, and he said, you need to change it. And we thought, well, there's a chance here of getting a recording contract, so we'll change it. And we had like a sort of a fan club in our hometown of Wolverhampton then, and we put a competition out to sort of think of a name for us. And these letters came in, and so someone mentioned Ambrose and someone mentioned Slade. So at the start we were called Ambrose Slade. And then we did a recording audition in London, and the manager of the record company really liked us, and we were just recording there. We didn't write our own songs then, and we just playing the songs that we'd learnt on stage. And the head of the company, he said, I really like the band. He said, but I think you need London management. You need someone in London to look after you, someone who's experienced. And we said, well, we don't know anybody. You know, we got no idea, you know, because we weren't living in London then. And he said, let me have a think. And then one day, Chas Chandler came into the studio. People who don't know Chas, he was the bass player with the Animals from the 60s. They had a really incredible success, and then when the Animals broke up, he went into management, and he's the guy that discovered Jimi Hendrix and produced and managed Jimi Hendrix. And then he wanted to manage us, and we thought, this is going to be fantastic, you know. So it was a big help for us. That was a big help, meeting Chas.
Yeah, and back in the days, how old were you guys when you met each other? When you met Noddy and Jim?
I was
16, 17?
Yeah, about 18. 18 years,
okay.
Yeah. And it worked together because we had a rehearsal in this pub near where Nod lived with his parents, and it worked straight away.
And how did you get along? You know, one thing is to play music together. Did you get along good?
Oh, we had a fantastic. It was a fantastic relationship. You know, we sort of. We have this unwritten law with Slade. We never bought each other drinks. We never paid for anything with each other. You know, so it was just an unwritten law that we had between each other. It was a fantastic relationship. We had a great time.
Yeah, and you still have in many ways, yeah. But again, back you Ambrose Slade. When did that become just Slade, and why?
Well, when we were Ambrose Slade, when we met Chas, and we was getting us different, better gigs then, and people used to get the posters wrong. It was like Arnold Slade or Amgo Shed or something like that. So we just decided to drop the Ambrose and just call ourselves Slade, just one word. And that was about 1968, I think that was, 68, 69.
So it became Slade.
Yeah.
Yeah. And recording and finding songs. I know you wrote some of the songs in the beginning, and Noddy wrote and Jim wrote together. Yeah. What was the first songs you got on the record? Was that written by yourself, or was it songs you got from outside?
Well, on the first album we do with Chas Chandler, it was Play It Loud, and Jim Lee and myself had most of the songs on that particular album. But I don't play any instrument except for drums, and I'm totally tone deaf. Trying to say I cannot sing, so I wrote lyrics, and I was trying to get across to Jim. But like I said, it took a long time because I can't sing, and had the ideas in my head. I'm a fantastic singer in my head, but when I'm singing it to somebody, but then Jim Lee and Noddy Holder got together, and it worked straight away. "'Cause I Love You" was the first one, and that was our first #1 in 1971.
Yeah, and before, just to go a little bit back, as I heard once, I think it's Dave who told me that you played a little bit punk music to begin with because you didn't know what way you would like to go, but that was before Slade, right?
Yeah, well, sort of. I mean, sort of. We like you said, we didn't really have a direction at that time. We weren't writing songs. We were just covering things, but making our own arrangements on them. You know, so yeah, and it wasn't till we met Chas Chandler, and he said you have to start writing your own songs, you know, and that's how that started really.
Yeah, and I Love You became a big hit. How was it for four kids from Wolverhampton suddenly to see themselves as big stars that everybody recognized you?
Well, we never saw ourselves as big stars. We were the worst people like that. We were always first at the party and last to leave, you know, so we couldn't be cool at all. We weren't cool at all, but a fantastic time. And I remember in those days, none of us were on, we still live with our parents, and none of us were on the phone then, because I remember we were driving to a gig in 1971. We were driving to a gig, it was around October 1971, and "'Cause I Love You" we knew was doing really well, so they used to release the charts on a Tuesday lunchtime in those days, and because we hadn't got a phone, so we couldn't call anybody, so we pulled over in our old van and listened to the radio so we could see where "'Cause I Love You" was in the charts, and it was going up and up and up, and they hadn't played "'Cause I Love You", and I thought, oh, it's gone out of the charts. We never thought ourselves to be #1, and then it was #1. It was like 4 Kids at Christmas, you know, sort of thing. Incredible feeling. That was in October 1971.
Yeah, And then you continued making records, but when did you start touring, you know, for real, not just playing one job here and one job there? Was that right after Cause I Love You that you started touring, or?
Yeah, it was 1971 actually, Steve, because a promoter called Mel Bush, a guy in England, promoting England, he approached Chas about us doing our first tour, you know, and he says, I've got this other band that's coming up through the things, you know, sort of like we'll put the two on together, two guys together, and that was Status Quo. And so there's a Slade and Status Quo was our very first tour in 1971, and the tickets, I don't know, you can say it was 50p each a ticket, so it was less. It was about, you know, probably about 5 kroner a ticket to come and see us and Status Quo, and we've been friends with Status Quo ever since, and that was 1971, and then we toured 2 times in 1972. We just carried on touring all the time. Then we were doing proper tours, not like one night stands, and then we could spend more time in the studio.
And yeah, because the studio, I think after the #1 hit, you had to make new songs to stay on the charts.
Yeah,
right?
well, I remember Justin was saying that, no, we've got to keep on doing it now, you know, sort of thing. And we spent a lot of time recording and sort of learning how to work in the studio, really. And
then on all these tours, was it forbidden that the guys in Slade could have any girlfriends because all the girls had to dream about you guys?
Yeah,
or how was the rules back then?
It was that kind of thing. It was girlfriends were kept quiet, you know. So we all had girlfriends at the time, you know, but you were sort of kept quiet because it was the thing that you didn't have a girlfriend, you know. Sort of you were out there sort of thing. But I think all that changed after a while. But like I said, it was then. It was girlfriends and things like that were kept quiet.
But did you recognize them as hits before they became hits, or was it Chas who could see this is the song that's going to be #1?
I think Chas more than anything. The only song that I remember that I knew straight away, me personally, there was a hit, was when we recorded Mama We're All Crazy Now in 1972, and I thought then that's going to be a big hit, and it was a big hit for us. It actually entered the charts at #2. You know, I mean, which was unheard of then, since the Beatles had done it. And there's that song and Far, Far Away that are my 2 favourite Slade songs.
In 1973, an accident happens for you, and it's actually life-changing for you in many ways. Yeah. You could have been dead in that accident. Yeah. Do you remember anything from the time before you went on the fatal driving?
I've got no idea. You know, it's a strange thing. So that even now, it means nothing to me still. I mean, he was on the way from our hometown centre of Wolverhampton to where I lived, just on the outskirts of Wolverhampton. It happened on the road there, and when I was still living there, I used to drive by every day, and it meant nothing to me. And it still means nothing to me today.
You can't remember anything?
I've got no idea. But when I saw the specialist in New York, I was explaining the same thing. He says, what do you want to remember for? Your girlfriend sadly died. What do you want to remember for? I said, how I just like, you know, just for my own mind. He said, no. He said, the brain has this incredible sort of mechanism. It will switch off, you know, just before impact, and switch back on when it's ready. And that's what happened. He says, you'll never remember. He said, but don't even think about it. He said you could cause yourself a lot of trauma.
Yeah, because actually you went through the front window. Yeah. And you could have been dead. Yeah. That's what the doctor said. It's really amazing that you are alive.
What happened was, I mean, we were both thrown out the car. Sadly, my girlfriend was already dead, and apparently I was about to die in the road, and two nurses happened to be coming by. It was about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and two nurses happened to be driving by to go to the hospital on duty, and they managed to keep me alive.
Okay. Did you hit a tree or something like that?
I've got no idea.
You were not told afterwards what happened?
I hit a wall.
A wall? Okay.
The entrance to a school.
Okay.
I took that out, and I've still got no idea what happened.
Because one of the things that this accident caused you is that you lost the possibility to taste things and to smell things. Yeah. But worst of all, also you lost your short-time memory. Yeah,
that was the really frustrating thing. I used to wake up in the morning and I got no idea where I was or what I was about to do and things like that. It's still the same in certain ways. You know, during those years, 73, 74 onwards, we were touring non-stop. So I was in a different hotel room every night. So when I woke up, I hadn't got a clue where I was. And that's when I started keeping my diaries. And so I could read my diaries and see where I was, what I was doing, where I was going that day, where I'd just been. It's very hard to explain to people what that's like, but it's sort of, at the time it was so frustrating. I was almost like a nervous wreck I'd forgotten all the songs. You know, I had like lists of things of what to play and things like that. It's so hard to explain to someone what that feeling is like. You know, I'm used to it now. I spend a lot of time at home now, so when I wake up in the morning, I can recognise like the light shade or a picture on the wall sort of thing, and then I know where I am. It's there's nothing I can do about it, Steve. I mean, I remember when I saw, like I said, when I saw this specialist in New York, he said, accept it, you know, don't try and fight it, he said, because it will make it worse. You could give yourself a nervous wreck, make yourself a stroke or something like that. Yeah. He said, just accept it, you know, and that's what I've done since like about, you know, during 73, and it's very hard sometimes, but there's nothing I can do about it. Mm.
And you actually also did maybe the biggest hit for Slade today, shortly after actually your accident.
It was the same year.
Yeah, yeah. And can you tell a little bit about going back to the studio and how it came up with this big hit that you'll be telling people what is the big hit if they don't know it?
Yeah, well, that's Merry Christmas, everybody, of course. That was 1973, and we were on a tour in America, which was very hard for me. Our tour manager had to have the room next to me in the hotel so he could wake up before me and wake me up and tell me where I was and what I was doing and things like that. Anyway, we had a week off in New York before we went on to Australia and Japan. And Chaz, who was with us at the time, like I said, he was also our record producer. I said, do you have anything, while we're here, we've got a week off, do you have, to Lotton Jim, do you have any songs we can maybe get in the studio and record? And this was the summer, June or July of 1973, it was a 100-degree heat wave in New York. And Notting Jim said, well, we've got this Christmas song, you know, the song we've written about Christmas. And Chaz said, let me hear it. He said, they've played it, he said, we have to get in the studio to record this straight away. And there we were in the record plant in New York, where John Lennon basically recorded all these things. And the keyboards, the organ on Merry Christmas is John Lennon's. keyboard, because we were in the studio doing Merry Christmas, and Dennis, the engineer, we said about using this harmonium on the start. He said, well, that's John's. He said, I'll call him and ask him. And he said, yeah, no problem, let Slade use it. They can use it for as long as they want. And now there's a 100-degree heat wave in New York, and there we were singing Merry Christmas. And you know, when we finished it, we said, not sure, I don't know, we don't know about this. The atmosphere didn't seem right.
So here it is, Merry Christmas, everybody's having fun. Look to the future now, it's only just begun. Are you waiting?
And Slade had big success, as you told before. You went around the whole world 4 times, playing concerts, and you made a lot of hits. You made a lot of money, of course. And what made it all stop? When did it stop? First time, because Slade is still existing. But back then you had a break to begin with. What was the reason for the break, and why?
I think mainly because America was a hard thing for Slade. In the 70s, we toured there non-stop with no success. You know, nothing at all. In the States, they got the AM and FM stations, and our particular records are a bit too loud or noisy for AM stations, and not quite sort of hip enough, you know, sort of for FM stations. And we never got any radio play. You know, they didn't know how to channel us, didn't know how to put us, you know, we never got... the only time we sort of sold records was a lot of the time when we did concerts, during the afternoon of the particular day of the concert, we go into the local radio station to do an interview, because sometimes the radio stations co-promoted the concerts. So we go in to do an interview, and they play records then. And it was very difficult. I mean, we had some great shows in America, but we sort of attacked it all wrong. You know, we sort of we were on some of the wrong bills. You know, the time that we had great times was when we toured with Kiss, and there's a group called Brownsville Station who had a hit with Smoking in the Boys' Room. And they were great to us. Otherwise, it was very difficult for us. Like I said, we couldn't get radio play, and it wasn't until the 80s when MTV had started, when they could see the video as well, and that's what helped us a lot. And Sharon Osbourne managed us in the 80s in the States.
Yeah, and what made you stop? What was the reason for stopping Slade? Well, was it everybody saying, okay, now enough is enough, we don't want anymore, or was it one of you guys?
Sort of. I mean, it wasn't really happening anymore, and it was sort of like we felt like it had done its thing. You know, we've done our thing now with Slade, and that's it. And Noddy Holder wanted to do different things. He'd been offered a few acting jobs on some TV shows, and Jim was recording and producing a lot of his own stuff. And then Dave Hill and myself went back on the road of Slade 2 for a while.
Yeah, but that was you had a little break first, right, before you went back on Slade 2, because when everybody went their own ways, what did you do then? Was it like you say, okay, I've been working hard for a long time, I take a little bit holiday? Or?
Well, no, what it was, I was dealing in some of in antiques then, antique jewellery, and that was a totally new sort of interest for me then, and I was doing lots of antique fairs and things like that, and I did a few sessions with different people, but I had no intentions of going back on the road, you know, at that time anyway. And it wasn't until, funny enough, it was Susie Quattro's husband that came, Lentucky, who came, or ex-husband came and said that we could actually work again. And Nod and Jim didn't want to do it, so Dave and myself, we started to do like a new thing. At the start it was Slade 2, but we didn't need to have the 2, so we could drop the 2 and just call ourselves Slade again.
And now back in the days, you were a big fan of Ringo Starr, for example.
Yeah.
And later, after Slade's heydays, young drummers were fan of Don Powell.
Yeah.
How is it to have drummers who look up for you, who now play with some of the big names?
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, it's a lovely compliment, really. I mean, so some of these young guys come up and they mention things that I play, which I've forgotten about. And so, oh yeah, and they go, that's fantastic. I go, I've had to have a listen to that again. I don't know, you know. There was one time when I first came to Denmark, and I was to give lectures at some of the schools, and some of these guys, they've got some of these 14, 15-year-olds have got, you know, little bands, and I went to one lecture. It was in Silkeborg, and they asked me to get up and play with the band, and it was great. And they're all fantastic players, just these young kids, you know. And I remember when we finished, I think it was the guitarist turned around and he says, "You're a great drummer for an old man." I couldn't stop laughing.
We are coming close to the end now,
Okay,
but I have a question for you before we end. Now music became your life with the drumming. But if you had not become a drummer, what would have been your work then if you should look back? Do you have anything where you say, well, if it wasn't for the music, then I would have been working with antiques or other things? What would have been your life then?
Well, at the time when I was working in a factory before we did some professional in 1965, I was working in a steel factory in the laboratory testing metals. I was a metallurgist. I'd learned that from college, and whether I suppose I would have still been doing that, you know, I don't know, because that's what I was doing before we turned professionally in 1965. I was working in the laboratory in the steelworks testing metals.
Okay, and the last question, can you, it's actually not a question, but can you tell us one of your favorite anecdotes from your life? I know you have so many, I've heard many of them, but if the viewers should have one anecdote to end the program, which one should it be?
Oh God, I remember my father sort of saying, when I asked him if I could turn professional, and he says, yes you could, because my father was paying for my drums then. He said, you can turn professional, but don't come to me if it doesn't work. And I said, I will give you my first gold record. And he just laughed at me, and I kept my promise. When I got the first gold record, Because I Love You, I gave it to my father. I said, this is what I promised you. And he couldn't remember, but he did after a while, so yeah. Now you must be an expert in Silkeborg area, since you've been living there so long. If people from the outside should come to Silkeborg, where should they go, and what will be the nicest things to experience when they're there? Well, there's lots of great museums. I'm going to see the Trommerne in New York. That guy, they found it in the earth from thousands of years ago, and it looks like a model, but it's a real person. He's been preserved in the mud, you know, and that kind of thing, and that's fantastic. And go on the riverboat. You go a riverboat journey, because Silkeborg is surrounded by lakes. It's beautiful, lakes and forests. You go on the riverboat that takes you all around all the lakes all around Silkeborg. It's a beautiful place. And Silkeborg is also well known for their jazz music that they play around. Is jazz something for you, and do you go there when it's? It's not my kind of thing, but I do appreciate some of the things. And when they have the sort of the jazz festivals every year, and there's music in every bar, cafe in Silkeborg, and in the town square. It's a really fun time. It's a wonderful time. Do you still talk with Noddy from time to time, and Jim? I've been doing some recordings with Jim, actually. He's doing lots of solo things, and he asked me to play some drums on some of his tracks, which is quite nice. And occasionally speak to Nod. I haven't spoken to him for a while now, but occasionally we speak to each other. He's, you know, we have a good laugh about our career and the past and things like that, you know. Sort of, it's funny when I was still in England, and when we did see each other a lot, we'd be talking about certain things, and we were in company who got no idea what we were talking about, you know. So we've got some wonderful memories. Let that be the words. Thank you very much for coming by and have this talk. It's been wonderful, Steve. Thank you so much. Anytime you want to do this, I'm here for you. Thank you, Don. Yeah. Og til jer derude vil jeg gerne sige tusind tak, fordi I valgte at kigge med. Jeg håber at se jer alle sammen tilbage igen i næste uge.
Soul, soul,